Virtual Legality is a YouTube video series with audio podcast versions presented as commentary and for education and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have legal questions about the topics discussed, please consult your own legal counsel. Honestly, you don't want to be taking generic legal advice from a YouTube channel or podcast in any event. On with the show. The Perils of Intellectual Property Consent, featuring Solid Snake with Tekken. Hello and welcome to another episode of Virtual Legality. I'm your host, Richard Hoeg, managing partner of the Hoeg Law business law firm of Northville, Michigan. And today we're lightening things up a little bit. Last week was pretty serious. We covered a lot of controversial topics, a lot of important topics in the news. I highly recommend if you're interested in the doxing of the media at E3 and the ESA's response to that and some of the privacy issues that erupted around that you check out our video from over this weekend and some other of the stuff that we did last week. But today we're going to do something a little bit lighter. Not to say this isn't serious, but it's a little bit more entertaining than some of the stuff that we were talking about last week. So without further ado, let's take a look at a Kotaku article by Heather Alexandra that says, an EVO 2019 joke had fans thinking Snake would be in Tekken 7. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, EVO is a fighting game competition. It features a number of fighting games that are streamed live around the world and a number of the world's best fighters participating in these games. And we're going to read this article, but as part of their presentation on Tekken 7, something came up about Solid Snake from the Konami series Metal Gear Solid, and it was something that got people very excited for a short amount of time and then very much not excited right after that. So reading this article, it says, Tekken games have had some seriously far-out guest characters like Final Fantasy XV's Prince Noctis and The Walking Dead's villainous bat-swinging Negan. It's a series where anyone might show up. During the Tekken 7 Grand Finals at the Evolution Championship Series, EVO, this past weekend, a short video made it look like Metal Gear's Solid Snake would join the fray. Turns out, it was a joke. Unfortunately, the joke appears to have backfired in a big way with fans. During last night's Tekken 7 Grand Finals, a video played showing Solid Snake talking to Tekken producer Katsuhiro Harada. The iconic stealth hero snarked about some good-ass Tekken for a moment before the feed was cut. The video wasn't shown on the live stream, but multiple people in the live audience at the event uploaded video of the audience's excited reaction to social media. And it looked a little bit something like this. I've got the audio turned off for this recording, and that's the end, so that doesn't help you very much. But as you can see here, just from this paused image, it's showing the codecs from the original Metal Gear series on the PlayStation, Metal Gear Solid series. And it basically just had Snake pop up as an interstitial between these two matches at EVO and say, hey, that was some good Tekken, and then go away. But people lost their minds. And as I understand it from the context here, and I did some digging on social media and elsewhere, this was before Tekken had announced some new DLC characters. So people were excited and ready to have some new announcements made about Tekken. And so if you put an interstitial like this before your grand finale, naturally, everybody in the audience is going to think that Solid Snake is one of the fighters that's going to be announced. And in fact, that's exactly what they did think. And so when it turned out that that wasn't the case, EVO released a statement that said, just to clear things up, the Snake Cameo video that we showed during Tekken Finals was our idea of a little joke. It was not intended to imply a character reveal and was done on our own without consulting Bandai Namco. Sorry for any confusion. Bandai Namco, of course, being the company that's in charge of Tekken. They make Tekken. And they didn't reference actually here Konami, and we're going to get to why that's a particular issue. But it's just such an interesting thing to me because when you talk about an announcement like this from a legal perspective, even from a business perspective, you talk about going through a lot of hoops. You've got here imagery from Metal Gear Solid, which is owned by Konami. There might be other interested parties that have an interest in that, including maybe the artists for these images, depending on how Konami contracted out for that art. You've got the sound produced by David Hayter, who's the voice actor for Solid Snake, who talks in this little clip and talks about how much he likes that Tekken he just saw. And so in general, if you're running an event like an Evo, you have to jump through those hoops. You have to go get permission from those various bodies to use this kind of stuff. And it's interesting when we look at this article and it says this was not live streamed, but in fact, a number of people had their videos up on their phones and things like that. It strikes me that they knew that they probably didn't get permission for any of this. I mean, they knew that they didn't get permission, but they knew that they might get in trouble if they live streamed it. And so they cut off the feed. But in today's day and age, that's just not going to get you where you need to go. Everybody's got a very good video camera in their pocket at all times. And especially when you're talking about an event that is at its grand finale stages, it's no surprise that multiple people had their phones out and were recording it. So the next question that I had was, where in the world did this come from? Because as we're going to find out in this video, certain folks have some problems with the fact that it was used in this way. And I came upon, through the help of Reddit and some other places online, I came upon the Twitter thread for a Mark Julio or Julio. I'm not quite sure how he pronounces it. And in this Twitter thread from March of this year, he's got a reference here that says, check out my new subscriber notification for twitch.tv/markman23. Big thanks to David B. Hayter for lending his iconic voice, and another person for this sick video animation and edit. And the first video you see here on your screen, and I'll narrate it a little bit for those that are listening to this on a podcast, is the codec from Metal Gear Solid, the original version on the PlayStation, with Snake talking to Mei Ling, and it's basically saying don't forget to subscribe to this Markman23's channel. And then just below that, we have a clip of somebody playing Tekken, and it's described here by Mark as, and another clip from some good-ass game, where it says, hi, I'm Snake, and this is some good-ass Tekken, which is exactly the clip that was used at Evo. Now, these are actually two combined instances of these clips, and they come from this Mark Julio or Julio, but I had to know, who is this gentleman? And as we look through his Twitter biography, we find out, he says, hi, my name is Mark. I'm also Mark Man, which is his Twitch avatar. I work within the game industry for product design, product marketing, events, esports, and more. Want to work together? Find out more about me here. He's business development for Evo, brand and community for Tekken. And he's got a whole website that talks about things and sells things, which I've pulled up now. He says he's the leading authority on all things arcade sticks. He's the proud owner of the largest arcade stick collection in the world. He's based in San Diego. And he is the director of global business development for the Evolution Championship Series. So this is a high-positioned person at Evo. That's exactly the reason he was able to find those clips, is because it's him. And he used those clips to make an interstitial at the grand finale stages of Tekken. The problem is that somebody had a problem with that. And so we pull up the Twitter from Mr. David Hayter, who has tweeted about 3 hours ago, Evo, you also failed to consult me or Konami. Please do not use my voice to promote other games ever, DH. And so now we see a number of toes were stepped on. Because not only as part of this, just again from a business perspective, was the permissions that are needed to use these various things apparently not received by the runners of Evo and by this Mark person in particular, but it also had the effect of essentially negating some of their partners' announcements. As I understand it, the announcements were made for Tekken, for new fighters after this Snake cameo appearance at Evo, and they had 2 new fighters to announce, but because people were expecting Snake to pop up, they weren't as excited as they otherwise would have been when the fighters were announced. Now, I don't know whether that will have a long-term effect on the tail of sales for the DLC for Tekken, but at least in the moment, when you're announcing something big, a new product in its biggest form at this grand finale event at a fighting game tournament, if you're Bandai Namco, if you're the director of Tekken, you're thinking this is a big moment, this is an important moment to get that momentum out the door for selling these things, and it's all squashed, and it's all muted at best when you don't get what these people think they're going to get because some guy that's running the tournament decided to use intellectual property that he didn't have the rights to just kind of make a fun interstitial in between two events. And this is the kind of thing, honestly, people complain about legal all the time, right? They complain about human resources, they complain about legal, they complain about some other things that go on in big companies, big corporate entities. But this is the kind of thing that legal catches, okay? If you announce, hey, this is what I'm going to do at this moment in time in this tournament I'm going to put on, this is the kind of thing that a good legal department would say, wait, okay, do we have the rights to that? Also, from a business perspective, how is that going to feel to Bandai Namco when it's not Snake in their game? In this order of events, they're going to be disappointed. And you have to try to work through those mental exercises when you're legal, when you're business development, when you're just working with partners on these kinds of things. And it's clear that in this particular instance, that didn't happen. And that's interesting to me. This is a big event. This is a big game. This is another big game implicated in what amounts to an accident, but a silly one. This stuff is avoidable. Compounding this issue is the fact that David Hayter actually does sell voice clips, does sell kind of cameo appearances on a website named, appropriately enough, Cameo, which again, this was essentially tipped off for me in some of my social media channels. And this is a website I've got pulled up here that essentially allows you to go pay a set amount of money for celebrities of various levels of stardom to say something to you on video. We see here we've got some $20 ones. These ones, Charlie Sheen, Troy Aikman, these are some more expensive ones. But what's pertinent to us is that David Hayter is on this particular website. We've pulled up the page right now. It says book David Hayter for $75. You can click through on these various videos because these are the ones that people make public to hear him doing the Snake voice and some other voices that he's apparently known for. And that brings up its own question, which is, you know, if you're Konami, the Solid Snake character is actually yours. You essentially created this character, you wrote this character, you hired voice actors to perform this character. Everything that they do in that voice and using that name, Snake or Solid Snake, is a derivative of the intellectual property that you've created. So absent permission, David Hayter doing this for money is probably an infringement on Konami's rights to the Solid Snake character and to their rights to Metal Gear Solid. I'm not so sure that David Hayter doesn't have permission to do this insofar as it's very public. And if you recall, when we looked at his tweet, he actually called out the fact that Evo hadn't asked permission from Konami either. So it's very possible that David Hayter has tacit or explicit permission from Konami to go do this because, in all honesty, 40-second videos from next to his pool where he wishes Gabe a happy birthday in the voice of Solid Snake, those aren't going to damage Konami's business prospects. Those aren't going to damage anybody's desire for another Metal Gear Solid. So probably Konami understands that this is happening and is given this permission, and that's fine. But as a lawyer, I look at this and say, well, there is a bit of conflict in those potential intellectual property rights, even though that's David Hayter's voice. To actually sell that in the Solid Snake persona for money could raise intellectual property issues, which I imagine have been sorted out between him and Konami, although I'm not sure. Which is all a long way of saying when you actually look at the Cameo terms and conditions, which again is David Hayter's preferred service to get his voice and even maybe his face out there, you see that they do have lawyers writing their documents, and it says upon receipt of full payment for your Cameo video, you are granted a non-exclusive worldwide license to use the Cameo video. For what? For your own personal, non-commercial, and non-promotional purposes. So if you go get a video from David Hayter through Cameo of him telling your wife happy birthday, for whatever reason that might be, you're allowed to use it for that purpose. You've got this video, you can show it to your wife, you and your wife can enjoy it together and look at it constantly as David Hayter wishes her happy birthday. What you can't do is you can't use that video to go and promote your fighting game tournament, to go put it on a commercial. You can't have him say commercial copy and then suddenly put it on your YouTube channel that is monetized. You can't do these things under the license that is granted to you by Cameo. And we've talked about this a lot in Virtual Legality. I highly recommend looking at a number of my videos that talk about intellectual property licenses. But essentially, intellectual property is a bundle of rights, and when Cameo gets its rights from David Hayter, then David Hayter can essentially split it up in various ways. And he says, you get this license to this, and Cameo, you get this license to this, and I've highlighted what Cameo gets. They get the right to use the video to advertise, market, and promote the site, services, and any other products and services of Cameo, among other things. Which means, yeah, if that video is just so amazingly awesome that everybody would say, I need to get on that Cameo service, Cameo can use that video in a commercial to advertise themselves. You can't use that video in a commercial to advertise your used car dealership, but Cameo can. And that's how these things get split up. That's what the contracts in an intellectual property license are for. Now, to be fair, we don't know where Mark got his clip of David Hayter's voice. We don't know if he went through Cameo. It strikes me that he probably did, but maybe he's a friend of David Hayter's. If that's the case, then, when David records this for him, he can say as part of the recording, this is for your personal use, right? You're not going to use this for anything else, or you're only going to use this for promoting your Twitch channel, which, by the way, is not a personal use, but given the fact that David Hayter actually has to say, I want to subscribe to your Twitch channel, we get into these gray areas where how could I possibly not be allowed to use it to promote my Twitch channel, since those are the words that came out of your mouth. That was the script that was approved, which is an entirely different question. But if he didn't go through Cameo, then maybe there's an implicit license that David Hayter got wrong, and that Mark thought he had the rights to this, although whether he had the rights to the art from Konami is an entirely separate issue. But I thought this story was interesting. There's all these intellectual property rights flying around. I had no idea this Cameo service existed. I did see on there's David Hayter. There's the voice actor that voices not John Marston, the new guy that I can never remember from Red Dead Redemption 2. Arthur Morgan, I saw, was doing some birthday wishes as well on the Cameo service. And so it's very interesting, and it didn't surprise me at all the way these licenses read. They all seem very normal, but they all do seem like they would prohibit someone from doing what was done at EVO if, in fact, Mark went through the Cameo service, which is all a long way of saying in virtual legality, you really have to make sure you go and you get the permission from the person to do what you want to do with their voice, with their likeness, with their creations, because intellectual property is a complicated field. So if you know you're going to want to use this at your fighting game tournament, then ask them for that purpose when you go and you get their voice. If you don't know it at the time, and you don't know that you got the license to what you think you need, then you have to ask them for it now. Even if you got it back in March, just the fact that you have the file on your computer isn't necessarily going to save you. And certainly, if you don't ask for that permission, and you wind up in a situation like this one, where it certainly appears like you've embarrassed a number of parties, don't be surprised when they come out on Twitter and call you out for the fact that you didn't have permission and that you made everybody look bad. And certainly that's what's happened here. If you like this video, this has been Virtual Legality. Please like, please subscribe, please comment, please share. Please do whatever else you'd like to do with this video, although don't put it in a commercial if you wouldn't mind. I would prefer it if you didn't use it for commercial purposes. And honestly, I think if you look at your YouTube terms and conditions, you're probably not allowed to do that right now in any event. Otherwise, if you caught this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. If you caught it on a podcast, thank you so much for listening, and please do leave a review and comment on the podcast service you listen to it on. Thank you again, and I will catch you on the very next episode of Virtual Legality.